Hello everybody, my name is Sniping is Fun, and I welcome you all back to my next The 5 list. I'm presenting all of you here on YouTube. And this is going to be my second official wrestling-oriented list, jumping back into the world of wrestling to do a 5 list of The 5 necessary inclusions for the WWE Hall of Fame. Now before I get started, I would like to remind you all that there are, in fact, other wrestling Hall of Fames out there. WWE's Hall of Fame is not the only Hall of Fame. There's a National Hall of Fame. There's the Japan Hall of Fame, TNA's Hall of Fame, blah, blah, blah. And I will do lists more than likely for some of those in the near future. But I wanted to start off with the one that most wrestling fans and most of the world pretty much knows about, and that is the WWE's Hall of Fame, which started, I think, approximately in the early 90s with the likes of Andre the Giant being included in the Hall of Fame, and has since survived and continued for 20 plus years now with such inclusions as, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Pedro Morales, Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, and various other, tag teams, managers, Hall of Fame people, celebrity Hall of Fame people, and everything else under the sun. But even all these years later, and hundreds of people that have been included in the WWE Hall of Fame since its inception, many, many years ago, there are still many, exclusions. There's still many, wrestlers and celebrities and managers and whatnot that have yet to even grace being included in the WWE Hall of Fame. And these are my 5 I feel need to be included. My 5 that I feel above the rest, above everyone else, needs an inclusion in the WWE Hall of Fame. So let's get started with my first choice on my list, my first in this 5 list, and it's going to be a wrestler I included in my first ever The 5 list in general, the wrestling one, the 5 new legends for the WWE 2K series, because quite frankly, not only do I feel he should be included in the games, I do feel he should be included in, WWE Hall of Fame for what he's done in the world of wrestling, international, Japan, or otherwise, and I kind of gave it away because there was 2 Japanese wrestlers on that list, and the one I feel out of those 2 that deserves it above all else is the Great Muta! Let me put this right here. Can you see it? There you go. In my opinion, the Great Muta is a wrestler, whether you're just looking at the Japanese wrestlers or the entire wrestling industry historically back then to now or otherwise, that I feel truly deserves to be included in the WWE Hall of Fame. It's not just because of his prowess and his accomplishments he's done in the world, in Japan, but also what he's done internationally. He's done numerous stuff with WCW back in the day against like Sting and whatnot. He has done other international stuff, not necessarily in WWE or otherwise, but he's done stuff with TNA and other parts of the wrestling world outside of Japan. So he does have an international prowess that most wrestling fans that know of Japanese wrestlers probably have heard of him or know of him. He's been around since like the 80s. The Great Muta is one of the greatest Japanese wrestlers of all time. His presence with the face paint is awesome. He does the freaking Shining Wizard. His wrestling moveset is crazy. He's proven himself to be diverse. And of course, everyone's going to remember the freaking Poison Mist where he spits all over the people, and it's like the red mist and the green mist and all this other stuff. And he was probably one of the first people in Japan to do that. He is a legend in the wrestling business, only in Japan or otherwise, the world, all around the world. In my opinion, he deserves to be recognized for his accomplishments because of such. And if they include someone, and I know he's such a legendary wrestler in Japan as well, like Antonio Inoki, because he did the whole, All Japan, New Japan and stuff. Like, he is more legendary than the Great Muta, quite frankly. But I think the Great Muta has done just as many accomplishments in his career as Antonio Inoki has done, and Antonio Inoki is such a big Japanese wrestler, and he's included in the WWE Hall of Fame. The Great Muta, in my opinion, truly deserves that list, to be on that list too. The Great Muta for the WWE Hall of Fame. That's my first choice. My second choice is going to go to a female wrestler that, despite all the controversy around her, and because I said that, you probably know exactly who I'm talking about, truly does deserve to be in the WWE Hall of Fame for her departure. She's one of the first women's wrestlers in the WWE specifically that have actually shown off that the women can actually go and the women can actually be freaking wrestlers, and that is Chyna. Chyna was one of the first women in the WWF outside of Luna Vachon and Bo Nakano and Alundra Blaze and obviously Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young to show that women can wrestle just as well, if not better, than the men. And she could do pretty well. She had the bodybuilder physique. She was not the typical scrawny diva that WWE became known for later on in the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression and whatnot in early PG. She could kick ass. She had the strong presence about her. She was part of DX, a legendary stable. She was Triple H's manager. Then she went to Eddie Guerrero. Then she went and was Too Cool, going against whatever, which was before Eddie for that matter, against the Radicals. And then she's one of the most legendary women in the company. Not even just in WWE, but in wrestling in general. Maybe she's not number one. I sure as heck wouldn't put her at number one out of the most like efficient, legendary, women wrestlers, but she did make a spot for herself, make a mark for herself, in her short time in WWF, WWE, and then she did continue to do some sort of wrestling stuff afterwards, like TNA and whatnot. Not saying it necessarily matters here, but she has the presence in there, and she was one of the first women to actually show that she can kick men's asses and just destroy people and just be a freaking badass. And it's like, I understand the whole issues of she did porn, even though freaking a lot of the wrestlers, they're like, X-Pac's going to be included one day in the Hall of Fame, and he did porn with her, and they're going to, just because he's Triple H's friend, they're going to put him in there. Nothing against X-Pac, he truly deserves it. And then other wrestlers have done crap in the past, like some people, even in self-defense, murdered people and did bull crap, and a lot of things. No wrestler, especially back in those days, had a clean slate. Please believe me, they did not. So I don't know why the issues she has with the company, the issues with porn and whatnot, would exclude her from the freaking WWE Hall of Fame. She deserves it, and that's why I would definitely say Chyna should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. She should be the next woman to be included in the Hall of Fame. They've included, Ivory and Jacqueline and Lita and Trish and whatnot. She needs to be on there too. Quite frankly, other women do too, but I'd say Chyna is the next choice. My third one is going to go to another wrestler that has both an international presence in Japan as well as in the world of the American wrestling, and that goes to Stan Hansen. And for those of you who don't know who Stan Hansen is, he's completely another badass, and he wrestled back in the day when Vince McMahon Sr. had the WWF, and he did come back during Vince McMahon Jr., Vince McMahon's WWF. He fought the likes of Bruno Sammartino and Ivan Koloff and all that stuff back then. He has a lot of, especially in All Japan and New Japan Pro Wrestling, he's such, the strong style, the stiff fighter. He's one of those wrestlers you'd hear about back in the day that just would go hard and would not let up. He's like a wrestler that's really hard-fisted and really kind of hurt you. He really was like a brawler. He really was like the strong style, like the type of wrestler that would do something like that. And he has had history in, like I said, American wrestling. Like I said, he did the AWA, he did WWF, WWF, WCW. He's done numerous things. He's been wrestling since like the 80s, I believe, maybe the 70s, 80s, because he did WWF. And he's had a illustrious career spanning multiple companies. The fact that he's not included in the WWE Hall of Fame, given that he's such a freaking badass in the world of wrestling, all the accomplishments he's done and how hard of a wrestler he is, and the fact that he got popular off that style, still amazes me that he never has been included in the WWE Hall of Fame yet. But truly, I feel that the likes of Stan Hansen should be included in the WWE Hall of Fame. 4, and this is going to be another controversial choice, kind of like, Chyna, but controversial for other reasons. And I'm going to get to those as soon as I show you the name. Owen Hart. I'm sorry, Martha, or whatever his wife's name is. I'm sorry, really, if I mispronounced her name or picked the wrong name or so. I'm sorry for his wife. I'm sorry for his family, his children, his brother Bret Hart, the rest of the family, the whole wrestling world. I know what happened to him when he died in 1999 was a tragedy, and I would strongly say the blame goes for the fact that the harness wasn't, fully tested correctly, or it was Vince McMahon's fault for doing the Blue Blazer or something like that. And I understand the fact that his wife, maybe even his kids, probably would blame the company, because quite frankly, it is kind of their fault. But his wrestling legacy needs to be honored in some way. I'm sorry if it's against what his wife would want, but they've started including him, barely started including him in DVDs and the network and whatnot. I'm not saying to fully push his name out and advertise him after Eddie Guerrero died, because that would be very dishonorable, really horrible. And I'm not saying to necessarily include him in the WWE 2K games, even though quite frankly I do think Owen Hart needs to be in there with the rest of the Hart Foundation. But his inclusion for what he's done in the world of wrestling in WWF as the Blue Blazer, as himself, before when he wrestled in Canada with Brett and everything, part of the Hart Foundation, part of himself, part of the Nation of Domination and stuff like that. His wrestling history, his legacy as a legendary wrestler, regardless of how it ended, should be honored. And it irks me that he's still not in there. I understand what his wife and family are, thinking, why they probably want not to honor that, especially because it's the company's fault that he kind of, what happened to him, and quite frankly it was. But his legacy needs to be, remembered. And I think Brett would even agree that he should be in there. I wouldn't be surprised if his kids want him in there. He should be honored for what he's given to the wrestling company, and I truly believe that Owen Hart needs to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And my last choice, my fifth one, goes to a non-wrestler. The reason why I didn't make this list of top five, the 5 wrestlers that should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. 4 wrestlers and 1 person whose history with the company since the 80s until most recently when they changed the person that did it, pretty much. His legacy deserves to be mentioned and honored as well, and that goes to Jim Johnston. And if you don't know who that is, he's the guy who, since pretty much the Rock and Wrestling era, the Hogan era, up until when they did the whole CFO thing for NXT and whatnot, the new music. I don't know if he still does any songs or not, or if it's just like from like the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, 2010s up to the CFO and whatnot. He's done the music. He has been the person that's been behind the scenes making all the wrestlers pretty much music. Chris Jericho's, Triple H's, The Rock, Steve Austin's, all these different songs that are not, licensed music from real bands. He's pretty much had a hand in making every single one of their songs. He has built the company up to be using music for entrances, because before him, there really wasn't entrance music for wrestlers. So he kind of was the person to start that trend. He was the person to make that big and give all the wrestlers their freaking music. Why he's not included yet, because of all he's given to the company, is beyond me. And that's why, for all that he's done music-wise and bringing music to the WWF, WWE, Jim Johnston needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And that is my 5 necessary inclusions for the WWE Hall of Fame. Chyna, Owen Hart, Stan Hansen, The Great Muta, and Jim Johnston. Put in the comment section what you guys think. Do you guys all agree with these choices? Would you like to see all these choices? And do they truly all deserve to be in the WWE Hall of Fame? And who do you think needs to be in the Hall of Fame? Because there's to a point where some wrestlers wait too freaking long to be included in the Hall of Fame. Case in point, recently, Rick Rude and the Macho Man, who should have been inducted, both of them, a lot sooner than they actually were. And I'm hoping more people that deserve it get it sooner rather than later, if not never. I'm hoping. Put a comment on what you guys think. My name is Tiger's Fun. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to, and have a lovely day, and see you all later. Bye.